I remember it clearly. That night, Abdul and I decided to play the Doritos horror game in 2010. We were just two curious 13-year-olds looking for a thrill on a Friday night while my parents were out of town. We had no idea that night would turn into a nightmare that still haunts me today. As soon as we started the game on my old computer, the atmosphere in my room changed instantly. The air felt heavier, like something wasn't right. Abdul laughed nervously, brushing it off. "Come on, Brian, it's just a game," he said, trying to reassure me. Doritos had released this online horror game in the late 2000s, letting users create unique horror experiences using their devices. It became a hit but was quickly shut down. No one knows why a game that popular disappeared so suddenly. What happened that night in 2010, I don't think it was just the game. We had just moved into that house after my dad went bankrupt and decided to sell our old place and rent something cheaper. The house was big, but really cheap for a reason. It faced a cemetery. Our family wasn't very religious, and since my parents were Dutch immigrants, the view didn't bother them much. But I'd heard things at night sometimes, sounds that didn't make sense. Looking back, I'd blame what happened that night more on the cemetery than the game we were excited to play. My parents didn't usually let me use the computer after 9 p.m., but since they were out of town that night, I invited my friend Abdul over. The game started off normal enough. We explored dimly lit hallways in a virtual hotel, our faces lit by the flickering screen. But when midnight hit, a cold chill ran down my spine. It wasn't the game's sounds or visuals. It was the feeling that we weren't alone. A sharp knock on the window snapped us. We paused the game and looked at each other, hearts racing. "Probably just a branch," I whispered, even though the nearest tree was too far to touch the glass. Carefully, we looked outside, but the darkness hid everything. All we could see was the foggy cemetery in the distance. Uneasy, we went back to the game, trying to laugh it off. A few moments later, the game took a terrifying turn. The screen glitched violently, and for a split second, it showed the entrance to the cemetery next to my house. It was supposed to be the virtual hotel we were seeing. We stared at the screen, confused and scared, as it went back to normal. "Dude, did you see that?" Abdul whispered, his voice shaking. "Yeah," I replied, my own voice trembling. "Let's just keep playing. It has to be a glitch." But the game had changed. Every challenge now felt disturbingly personal. One task told us to sing a lullaby to calm a ghostly child. And as we hesitated, we heard the very real sound of children laughing somewhere in my house. A chill ran down my spine as we searched the room, eyes wide, finding nothing. The worst part came when the game told us to enter a hotel room with the same number as my address. 666. As we hesitated, the air turned ice cold and heavy, and a smell of dirt and decay filled the room. Before we could react, the lights went out, plunging us into darkness. A low, mournful groan echoed through the air from the direction of the cemetery. "Turn it off," Abdul shouted in panic, fumbling in the dark. I rushed toward the computer, my hands shaking, but before I could shut it down, a piercing scream blasted from the speakers, followed by an eerie silence. Then, in the darkness, we heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the kitchen. Something invisible brushed past me, its touch freezing cold. "Run!" I yelled. We sprinted toward the stairs, not daring to look back as the footsteps followed us, steady and relentless. At the top of the stairs, the air turned even colder, and my bedroom door creaked open on its own, revealing nothing but total darkness inside. We stepped back, our breath visible in the freezing air, when a deep, guttural growl came from within, followed by movement in the shadows. The figure that emerged looked eerily similar to a character from the game, but it moved in a way no animation ever could. Its eyes locked onto us, piercing through the darkness. Abdul stumbled backward, nearly falling down the stairs. "Brian, what is that?" he gasped. "I don't know," I said, struggling to speak, "but we can't stay here." We ran for the front door, but it wouldn't open. It was like something invisible was holding it shut. As the figure started coming down the stairs, we moved around the room, keeping our eyes fixed on it. Suddenly, the game let out a sharp, glitching screech from the computer, making us jump. The figure reacted, flickering like static as it moved closer. "Look at the screen," Abdul shouted. On the monitor, words flashed over and over. "Don't turn your back." Heart pounding, we obeyed, backing slowly toward the door. With every step we took, the figure mirrored ours, its movements disturbingly in sync with ours. The air grew thick with a foul stench, and I had to fight the urge to throw up. "We need to get out, now," I said, grabbing Abdul's arm. We managed to slip out of the room and slam the door shut, pressing our weight against it. Heavy thuds came from the other side, like something was hitting the door with terrifying force. "What do we do now?" Abdul asked. "I don't know, but we can't let it get out." We went to the kitchen to find something to barricade the door. As we searched, the lights started flickering again before plunging us into darkness. Suddenly, my phone rang, its sharp tone cutting through the silence. I hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice whispered, "It's not over." The call cut off before I could respond. I looked at Abdul, fear tightening in my chest. It's like the game. It's playing with us. We went back to the door, this time armed with kitchen knives. Now we could hear whispers coming from inside the room, words we couldn't understand, but that chilled us to the core. We stood there tense, watching for any movement. Hours passed. The night felt endless. But when dawn finally crept through the curtains, the sounds and the presence began to fade. The heavy atmosphere lifted, and we could finally breathe again. Carefully, we opened the door, expecting to see the figure. But the room was empty. The game was still running on the screen, like nothing had ever happened. Abdul and I looked at each other, relieved, but the fear from that night never really left. We spent the morning putting everything back in place, but we agreed not to tell our parents. Luckily, my dad soon got a contract in another city, and we moved out of that house. If you think ghosts are the only things to fear, think again. The real nightmare might be sitting right next to you. Before we dive into our next dark tale, hit that like and subscribe to join our circle of shadows, so you never have to face the darkness alone. It was supposed to be just a sleepover at our friend Liam's house. We were about 13 and really into video games. Liam was the only one in our group who had a PlayStation, so we went to his place a lot. That day, his parents were at a wedding and wouldn't be back until late. Perfect timing to try the Doritos horror game. This new online horror game from Doritos had come out in the early 2000s as a promo to bring back their old flavors. It was only available for a few months before being taken down. kids at our school had tried it, and it got popular because it was actually pretty scary, at least for a bunch of 13-year-olds. I remember how excited we were, all gathered in Liam's dark living room, ready to start the game. There were 7 of us, spread across couches and cushions, the glow of the computer casting eerie shadows on the walls. Liam had always been a bit intense, but that night he seemed even more on edge. His eyes kept darting around like he expected something to jump out at any moment. While the game was loading, I caught him whispering to himself, something he'd done since he was little, but this time it gave me chills. "It's just a game," he muttered, more to himself than to us. We shrugged it off and got into the game. It was way scarier than we expected. It messed with your mind, blurring the line between the game and reality. There was one level with the ghost of a screaming woman. That's what really seemed to set Liam off. Suddenly, he paused the game, his hands shaking. "Did you see that? The shadows, they're watching us," he whispered hoarsely. We laughed it off, thinking he was just being weird like usual. We didn't know something was actually wrong. As the game went on, Liam got more and more unstable. He jumped at every little sound, staring at the screen without blinking. "They're here," he suddenly said, making us all jump. "They're here for us." "Calm down, Liam. It's just a game," I said, trying to reassure him, but even my voice was shaking. "No, Adrian, you don't understand," Liam snapped. "They're not just in the game. They're in this room. They want to take us with them." We tried to laugh again, but this time it didn't land. Then Liam suddenly jumped up and ran to the kitchen. We heard drawers opening, things crashing to the floor. "What is he doing?" Rochelle whispered, her face pale in the flickering light. "He's just trying to scare us," Mark said, but he didn't sound convinced. After what felt like forever, Liam came back into the doorway, holding a kitchen knife in each hand. His eyes looked wild, unfocused, like he didn't recognize us. "They told me what I have to do," he said in a rough voice. "I have to kill all of you to save myself." Panic exploded. Chairs tipped over. Someone screamed. Everything turned into chaos as we tried to get away from him. The game kept running in the background, its creepy sounds playing while we scattered in fear. Liam wasn't himself anymore. He didn't recognize us, his friends. It was like he saw us as threats. We ran in different directions, trying to hide. His shouting echoed through the house as he chased after us. It became horrifyingly real when he reached Mark. Mark raised his arm to defend himself, and Liam lashed out, seriously injuring him. Everyone started screaming. I hid behind the couch, my heart pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it. Through the small gap underneath, I could see Liam's feet moving frantically. "You can't hide," he kept saying. "I have to do this. It's the only way to finish the game." Rochelle, braver than the rest of us, tried to talk him down. "Liam, please, man, put the knives down. We're your friends." But he didn't listen. He turned toward her and attacked. She cried out and fell back, clutching her face. At that point, everything had completely spiraled out of control. Every scream sounded like it belonged in a horror movie, not real life. I knew I had to do something. Summoning all my courage, I came out of hiding and ran into the kitchen. My plan was to grab something to defend myself, or better yet, stop Liam. I grabbed a frying pan, my hands slick with sweat. I turned just in time to see Liam entering, his expression frantic. Adrian, his voice cracked, full of rage and confusion. Why are you doing this? Why are all of you turning against me? You've always been on the devil's side, haven't you? It's not us, Liam. It's the game. It's messing with your head. I shouted. He hesitated for a second, confused. Then his conviction came rushing back. He charged at me, knife raised. I swung the pan as hard as I could, hitting him on the side of the head. He stumbled backwards, dazed. I grabbed whatever I could and threw it at him. Bananas, a carton of milk, glass bowls. He kept coming, still swinging the knife. Then the knife pierced the milk carton and got stuck for a moment. Milk spilled everywhere. I ran for my life. Liam tried to chase me, but he slipped on the milk and slammed his head against the counter. Breathing hard, I dropped the pan. My whole body was shaking. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by distant sirens. Someone had called the police. My friends had managed to get outside and run to the neighbors. The police burst in just as Liam staggered back out. 2 officers tackled him to the ground. When Liam's parents arrived, the scene was horrifying. Furniture overturned, blood on the carpet and walls, and their son in handcuffs being taken away. Recovery was slow. Physically, the injuries healed, but the psychological scars remained. We visited Liam in the hospital, where he was receiving psychiatric care. He didn't remember anything from that night. The look on his face, pure horror and disbelief when we told him what happened, was heartbreaking. We lost a part of our friend that day.